I'd be looking at my watch right now if I ever wore one, but it's Wednesday. So it's a rare Wednesday pod here for the All 32 duo of yours truly, Mike Giardi, and Will Parkinson alongside. But of course, the news of Stefon Diggs, Russell Wilson, some other stuff going around in the football world. We figure we just jump in today. If something happens later in the week, we'll jump in again. But for now, this might be the last pod of the week. A reminder that this show is brought to you by PrizePicks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And Gametime, best tickets, best prices to get you in to see any event you want to see. Let's start with the biggest news of last night, which was Stefon Diggs signing with the Patriots. The initial reports, and we have not gotten the real details yet, 3 years, $69 million, 26 of it guaranteed. I'm going to bet it's a 2-year deal, and the guarantees aren't what they seem to be. But overall, just we talked about this for weeks now. They're desperate. They needed somebody. He's the best of the available guys out there. They had him in for a visit last week. They ran him through a physical, feel good about where the leg is at. They make the move. They had to.
Yeah. I would say a couple of different things. Like we talked a little bit about it, but this felt like I said 2 for 40 or what I think that's what I said. And everyone was like,
you're an idiot.
What an idiot Parkinson is. Like, bro, you see my name in there. But in reality, this move had to happen. It had to be someone. You could not go into the draft forcing. You don't like. They needed to address receiver. Like this does not preclude them. Very similar to the Giants, which we'll talk about. This doesn't preclude you from taking a quarterback.
Right.
Preclude you from a receiver, whatever. Maybe if they love Ted McMillan, whatever. Or they love. I don't know. Obviously, not going to take Matthew Golden at 4. But like my point being, if they loved a receiver, still take them. Obviously, but. This at least allows you flexibility. This is part of what free agency did. It means they didn't. If Abdul Carter's there and they love him, great. You don't need him, but you can get him now. Like that's where you want to be. The Patriots are actually in a decent spot. The one spot's obviously tackle, which we've talked about a million times, and that's kind of where they are pretty pigeonholed. Outside of that, look, I don't know what Diggs is going to be like post ACL. I don't love receivers off a knee injury in their 30s. Like. Just went again. I mentioned it last episode. I went through with Mike Williams. Yeah. I don't even know what Brandon Ayuk's going to look like at age 25.
Right.
But $89 million, whatever they had in cap, $84 million in cap space. This is a glorified 1-year deal to me that they can easily make a 2-year deal if they want to, which I assume they will. I mean, that's kind of what they're in it for. I bet you. I don't know if we have the exact numbers yet, Mike, but I bet you 22 of the 26 million is this year, and then. There'll be some guarantees in the next year, and they can restructure the money and the whole thing. And it's a bloated year 3 it's good for Diggs, right? It makes him look like, hey, you still got it, man. You got a $70 million deal in your 30s coming off a knee injury. Like, look at you, because if he has a great year and he gets cut, like he can do the whole thing again next year. And for the Patriots, it's like, cool, take the bloated number. You'll never see that money. We're going to focus on the guarantees this year. You have to spend the money. And I think, if he's right, even the last half of the season, and maybe you mentioned, I think 85, 90%, I'd even go 75%. He's still the best weapon they have on their team. I think, and like, I'm not trying to be a dick. I just,
no, look, we talked about for the last 2 years, what's beyond, but the last 2 in particular, that room is a mess.
Yeah. They're in a spot where people are going to freak out about the number. And I get it. It's hard not to, but I think you have talked so much about, our player is going to get smarter about for him, it's smart for him because, again, it's all about perception. For the Patriots, you're sitting there going, we got to take a flyer on somebody. Everyone else told us to go scratch. So at some point, we got to get somebody. And again, Diggs is a good player. I think he's got the best ball probably left of him. I mean, I don't know if I were them, does Tyler Lockett move the needle? I just don't think at this point, and I don't want to bog up the slot in case of, hey, maybe we get Jalen Noel in round 2 and we love him and he can be our slot guy, or we love Restrepo and on day 3 and whatever it may be. My point being, to a true outside receiver for Drake May, I don't care about the price. This is like, Mike, I think I've referenced this at one point. I don't know if I think it was the 2011 NBA offseason where all these teams were spending crazy amounts of money when the cap went up. And everyone freaked out about Gerald Wallace making $10 million a year and the whole thing. The cap goes up every year, and if you have cap space, at some point you should spend it, especially if it doesn't bog you down long term. To me, this is a no-brainer for the Patriots. And then, again, if Diggs sucks, he's cooked. Go home. Like it's pretty. I don't know. I think it's win-win for the Patriots, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this is the way I look at it, right? And I think there's a lot of different layers to adding someone like Stefon Diggs. First thing I want to point out is there was a tweet shortly after the signing where Adam Schefter, who I'm sure is being fed this by either the Patriots side or ownership, whatever, Diggs going to be ready for week 1. Okay, first of all, can we pump the brakes on that just a little bit? The dude ripped his knee up on October the 27th. I get he's posting workout videos on Instagram like everybody does, and he looks great. Kendrick Bourne said the same thing. He got hurt right around the same time a year ago, and he wasn't ready for week 1. Wes Welker did it in week 17. He was ready for week 1. And you know what? Wes Welker wasn't the same player that entire year. And in fact, I was covering him. I remember having a conversation with him at the end of the year after saying, "Oh, no, I'm all right. I'm all right." Being like, "Yeah, I didn't have the same juice." And then the next year, he was back to being a 110 catch guy, right? Like it just, everybody's a little different. So you could make it back, but you're probably not getting the best of that player until at least a year removed from the injury. And certainly the year beyond that, which is why signing him to a multi-year deal, if they like it and like how it goes this year, it's nice to have him. Again, we don't have the full details, but it would be nice to have him under contract for next year as well. He's an interesting guy. I've said it a million times, covered him a ton when he was in Buffalo. That was when I was in my other place and they were the better team. And I was going to Buffalo a lot, spent a lot of time in Buffalo. And I would say he's unique in that you can get Stefon Diggs on a day where he can be the most charming, insightful, window to his soul type of guy. I mentioned this for as long as I can remember it. 6 days after Damar Hamlin dies on the football field and they bring him back, they had to play the Patriots. Stefon Diggs normally does not do post-game interviews on the field. Never in the 4 years I was covering them and he was there did he do one. He agreed to do one that day with me, and he was
Human.
He was insightful. He was emotional. It was like just one of those moments you're like, I can see why his teammates, by and large, not everyone, but by and large as a group, really love Stefon Diggs because he does care about the other guys. He does prioritize winning. The problem with that sometimes is, at least certainly in his past life, and we'll see what it's going to be like in this next stage of his career, he always felt like the best way to win a game was to get me the ball. It doesn't make him any different than any of these other star receivers or running backs or whatever. But what he would do, and we saw it at various points during his time in Buffalo, and it's one of the reasons why I think he wore out his welcome in Buffalo, was the outbursts on the field against Cincinnati in the playoff game.
He's an emotional player.
Yes, the sulking in the final year of his time in Buffalo. And in the second half of that year, I don't know if people here would remember it, people that are watching this pod, but having covered it, they phased him out of the offense.
Yeah.
And he's telling people he's being doubled.
Everyone's like he's watched because if you look at the numbers and the targets, it's totally different.
He's telling people he's being doubled. And then it was Reed from Kansas City was like, oh, the funny thing is we didn't double him once. Like they just got to a point where not only did they feel like he was slightly diminishing, they also felt like we're screwing up Josh a little bit, because if Josh doesn't throw to him on 2 or 3 plays, he's coming back and he's pouting. He's in his ear. It just became sort of it dissolved. I think the other aspect of this too, that probably was the thing that really pushed him out of Buffalo, the thing that took him over, was he never fought back against all the people, including his brother in Dallas, saying he's got to get out of there, publicly saying this, putting tweets out. And he never said when he would be asked about it. And this is where I would define him as unique, in that he could be this guy that would share his world to you. And then at the same point, you go to him, ask him a real question, an important question, like, hey, what do you think about what your brother's saying? What do you think about these other guys? You think you got to get out of Buffalo? And he'd be like, yeah, I'm not talking about that. Okay, well, then you're just feeding into the narrative that you do want out, that you're telling your brother and other players around the league that I've had enough. And then there was, of course, the tweet or the Instagram post, I forget what it was, where, does a star quarterback like Josh Allen doesn't need a star receiver. And he's like, are you sure? And that led to a whole thing again, where we had already seen the friction between he and Josh on the field. And it was like, why would you put that out there? And again, then not answer it. He didn't answer for it. He said it, and then I'm not talking about it. Well, you created a perception that you're not getting along with your quarterback, or you think you've made him. And look, I can tell you this, players were sad to see him go. And there were some coaches that certainly missed his competitiveness and his fire, but it was an easier room to manage. And it was an easier offense for Josh. And you saw, like, look, we thought they were going to take a step back. And they actually, at least in the regular season, and well, you can still say they made a push in the playoffs as well. They felt like they took a step forward. So, what Stefon Diggs is coming to New England? Is it the Stefon Diggs that still thinks the ball should go through him? Or is it the one that realizes I'm best suited now at this stage of my career as being the second banana? Now, granted, the Patriots don't have a first banana, so that's another problem that they're going to have to address. But, like, does he get that? And if he does, then I could see this being a multi-year relationship and it working out great for Drake May, working out great for Mike Vrabel, Josh McDaniels, everybody. I think he'll help the room. He took Gabe Davis under his wing in Buffalo. I could see him doing the same thing with Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, whoever they bring into the draft. Like, those are all good things. It's just, what are the real expectations for the player? You're right. He is their best receiver right now, probably, where his knee is at. But will he be able to handle if the ball goes elsewhere at times? Or does he still think, I'm Stefon Diggs from 4 years ago, and it's got to go through me?
Two things. One, the guy I can think, I'm not going to go to the Randy Moss in New England. Like, it's not a relevant comparison.
Moss is one of the 3-4
Diggs didn't
greatest
get hurt last year. Sure, you could do that, and like, hey, he's a little bit diminished. What people thought of, Randy at the time. I'll go to Odell with the Rams, and can the Patriots get him to be the model citizen, even if it's for a year, even if it's for 8 to 10 weeks? Can he be that guy that helps make this offense more dynamic? Can they get the best out of the quarterback? Can Josh McDaniels put him in a position to be successful? And I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. The point being that you saw Odell be really the second or third option for a majority of that run. And he's a guy who would have the temper tantrums on the sidelines and tweet stuff, and it's the immaturity, and it's the stuff with the women and the whole thing. And he's this big, pop star, megastar celebrity.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's like, you're not the same player you used to be. He was coming off the injury, if you remember, at the time as well.
Yep.
And he kind of had his tail between his legs a little bit. And I thought Diggs actually did a pretty good job. He was a captain last year in Houston, and everyone you mentioned, everyone you talked to, he did a great job. The one other thing I want to kind of mention with Diggs, and I think you tweeted about this last night, the notion, the Schefter tweet, look, we can do an hour on the deal was
the deals and the games that get played, yes.
But whether Diggs is ready for week one and should play week one are very different things. If he truly looks himself, if he's out there day one at camp, very different discussion. Or even like halfway through camp. Sure, I mean, he's in full practice while they're still in full camp. Yeah, sure, week one and should be on the table. If not, don't you short-term IR him and give him 4 extra weeks to get ready, and he starts and he's in real true football shape. He's practicing. You open the window in week 2, and it's a 21-day window in either week 4, week 5, however the timeline kind of shakes out based on when he goes on IR. Then you debut him. Hopefully your schedule lines up that you're like home, road, or home, road, and you come back to a home game against the Jets. I don't know. I'm just making it up. And it's like, hey, we're going to get a fuse, we're going to get some, a guy kind of integrating into our offense, and we're going to give him some early touches and see what he's like and test out the knee. And if it's not right, we're not going to push it. That's what I would do, especially in a year where you don't have to, like, I've said this a million times. They win 9 games next year. Everyone's like, dude, one more offseason like this, and we're good. And you have 2 more, that plus 2 more extra years of Drake May on a rookie deal, and you're feeling good. And if they win 6 games, but Drake May looks awesome, and still, they still doubled their win total, and you're still
and Diggs shows you something that he's closer to the guy that he's been at the end of the year.
Yeah. I just hope that they don't do we're going to rush him back and he gets hurt again, or we're going to rush him back and he looks like crap, because that's what happens when you first come off the knee. It's all going to be about camp and those reps. But Odell's the one name I could think of a guy that in both the Rams and then in Baltimore, where he was still an effective player. We could argue about Baltimore, how effective, but he still was a good, decent piece of that offense to help just give them something. And I think even if Diggs isn't your number one option all year, he at least defensive coordinators will at least go, we got to make sure 14's covered, as opposed to, I like Jalen Polk. I liked him in college. I don't think a single defensive coordinator in the league cares at the moment.
Nope, not yet. He's going to have to change the perception of himself for sure. You did mention one thing, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it's been a big talking point here in Boston locally about spending and people calling them cheap. And you can look at the 10-year window where I think they're second or third lowest team in terms of cash spending. And then you have these outlier years like going into the 2021 season when they spent all that money in free agency, Aguilar, Henry, Jonas Smith, Godchow, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my one concern about the build here. And again, we have to see what the final numbers all are. But did they spend so much money this offseason that they like to be, as Robert Kraft said, we like to smooth it out over a 3-year period. So he wants to be kind of even in terms of spending over a 3-year period. And so you're going all in and spending a ton of money this year, a lot of guaranteed money up front. He's got to put that in escrow. That's real money that he has to write a check for. That doesn't just sit in his bank account and accumulate funds. Nope, he has to put it in there for the player, and that becomes the player's money. Does next year, when you maybe think you're only a couple more players away, another big splash or two away, you know what? We got to do it a little bit on the cheaper because we went so in on this year. Just something to think about because that has been their history here in New England. It's great that they spent this year. I think they've done a good job in free agency, and we're not going to get them in trouble for what hasn't happened yet. But past history tells us they tend to cut it off after a big year of spending like this. Hey, speaking of speaking of money, speaking of fantasy sports and fantasy sports action, PrizePicks is the place to go. Great sponsor for us. We're both involved with it. 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on 2 and up to 6 players to win up to 1,000 times your cash. App is really easy to use. You can cross sports here now. We're getting Major League Baseball kicks off on Thursday. You get opening day. That's going to be crazy. Paul Skeens, by the way, started looking at some of his more or less numbers, more or less. Hockey, we're getting closer to the playoffs. NBA, regular season winding down, getting ready to the playoffs as well. So you can cross those sports. All you got to do is sign up today by downloading the app. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You can download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's go from Patriots wide receiver to potentially the Patriots left tackle of the future. Pro day at LSU today. Will Campbell standing on his combine numbers where he tested like an athletic freak, right? Like the 40 and the 10-yard splits and all these things. But there was those 2 measurements, the 32 and 5/8 inch arms and the 77-inch-ish wingspan, which would be historically over the last 25 years, something that no team has ever invested in and said, go play left tackle for us for the next however many years. Certainly not something that you would do at pick 4.
Yeah.
Will Campbell measured today. He measured at 33 inches even, which when you consider a lot of other players have gone from the combine, had their pro days, and they have also been a little bit bigger, longer, whatever. Maybe the measurements were a skosh off at the scouting combine, but what's the difference there? 5/8 to the full inch difference? Should that matter for the New England Patriots picking at number 4 overall and in desperate need of a left tackle? Again, we talked about this last time. They haven't had a competent left tackle. Well, Trent Brown gave him the one season, but before that, in terms of at least consistently lining up there, it was Nate Solder, who was nobody's idea of an all-pro. But, I think
everyone looks to when Tom Brady gets the ball out of his hand and point.
Yes, as I said, Tom Brady made a lot of those offensive linemen in front of him look a hell of a lot better than they were.
We saw them go to other places, and without Scarnecchia and Brady, they looked like crap.
Yeah. So does it change or should it change how the Patriots view Will Campbell?
I don't think so. Mike, here's where I stand with the Patriots debate at 4. And again, I don't know if Patriots fans will agree with me. They probably won't. I'll get a last name Parkinson out of this idea to do this. I love the YouTube comments. They're the best.
Really.
In the order for me in which they should operate, it should be trade back. It should be 1 because I think this team is more than a piece away. And I think if they don't go that far back, I mentioned the potential trade with Carolina or Chicago or one of those teams staying in the top 10. You'll probably still end up with Will Campbell, by the way, if you do that. And at the same time, you probably acquire at least a couple third rounders, maybe an extra top 50 pick that you're like, hey, we just added Will Campbell, Jack Besh, and I don't know, just pick your whatever.
Right.
Pick your guy and Ezeraku at 30, whatever, at 41.
Right.
I don't know.
Arroyo at tight end.
Arroyo,
Something.
whatever.
Right.
It doesn't matter. The point being, or we added another safety, or we added another defensive lineman. I feel like I like Will Campbell. I think he's a good prospect. I think he's no doubt a first rounder. I think he's a no doubt top 15 player in the class. I'm not sure he's that much better than Armand Membu or Membo, however you want to. Just told it's Membo, which would be interesting because not a single soul is pronounced it that way.
I was going to say that's going to throw us off for the next month.
I'm not sure if there was this is an Olu Fashanu versus Olu Fashanu.
Right.
People still don't have it right.
Yeah.
I think Campbell's a left tackle. If you think he's a left tackle, like that's fine. He struggled a little bit against speed. And I really worry about it's not just the arm length, Mike, that was my concern. It's more of the wingspan and like not to be like too like whatever. He's got a small chest and like short arms. So it's not like he's got this crazy wingspan because how broad he is and whatever. And there's a lot of like space inside. Like I look at like an Alfred Collins, for example, right? Alfred Collins got an 86.5-inch wingspan. I mean, think about them going and got kind of head to head. Alfred Collins can lock out 10 full inches difference in like arm length. I mean, that's fight, styles make fights, reach, and these different things. There's a reason when you watch a UFC fight, in boxing, reach is right there. And the reason I bring that up is because offensive and defensive line is fighting in a phone booth, and having reach means you can you may be able to win leverage. I also don't love the stance. I know it's like whatever, but I don't love the fact that he's standing straight up as a guy who's already going to struggle against speed. The whole thing with, again, I'll kind of like end with this on this. They took him at 4. I think it's a good pick. I think I'd rather them either go Carter, Hunter. Honestly, I know this is not popular. I think I'd rather them go Mason Graham. I really want to.
Hey, look, there's more there. What you just brought up, there's more safety in it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like he's going to be a good player, but is he a franchise left tackle or is he a guy that should be a guard that we're going to now move? And also, I don't want to be taking a guy in the 4 and the top 4. They already have Mike Onwenu, who couldn't play tackle, but is a better guard, and they're paying handsomely.
Yes.
And it's no shade towards Onwenu. Like the Jets have this problem with AVT. But if I'm going to draft Will Campbell at 4, personally, and I think he's a guard, right? He's going to be on my left guard on opening day. We're going to have him and Onwenu at the guard spots, and we're going to feel really good about things. Like our interior is going to be really solid, and tackle will go a day 2 guy, and we'll do a competition, and we'll trade for somebody. It's a veteran cap casualty, post June 1, whatever it is. So now they're in a less valuable position, and they've never played it before. Like that doesn't make sense to you. If you're drafting Will Campbell, he has got to be your starting left tackle day 1.
Right.
Armand Membu is your starting right tackle day 1. Like the Patriots go offensive line, that guy has got to be their natural position. Otherwise, to me, it's not worth it. I say the same thing for the Jets or any of these teams in the top 10.
Let me just, you were talking about the variety and the length. Willie Lampkin is a 5'10" guard from North Carolina. 5'10", 275-ish pounds, although they're sure he's packed on some weight here as he gets ready for the pro level. His wingspan is 83 inches at 5'10". Will Campbell's 6'6" and has this, it is a historical outlier, and if you're going to make that pick, you better be right. The other thing I would say is, and again, we're both, he's a very good football player, and his football IQ is off the charts. He calls out blitzes to the quarter, like it's next level thinking, but you still got to be a good enough athlete over there, and you need every advantage you can get to fight in a phone booth, as you said. And while he faced some really elite rushers in the SEC, Shamar Stewart, Nolan, Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, all those guys, he faces the best of the best pretty much every single week. They come at you. They're freaks. Greg Rousseau is a 10-sack guy. Yeah, we talked about him last pod, right? Good player. Not a great player, good player. go gadget arms. He runs like a 4.5 40, like strong as an ox. Like he has this ability to, I can get my hand on you before you get your hand on me. And then you know what I can do? I can control you as opposed to vice versa. So I just think it's a risky proposition. And I've got to tell you, the last couple of days, more and more, I feel like that's gonna be their pick.
Yeah,
so I'm sort of
it's really a good pick. I don't want to be sounding overly negative.
well,
I just think there's other
still
guys I like.
drafting a guard at 4, if that's what he turns out to be, that's a tough. He better
Unless you
be
need Quinn Nelson, and even that,
I was
like,
gonna say he better be Quinn Nelson, and he's never played the position.
yeah, I think I'd be like, oh, good, solid pick. But it gives me a little bit more of JC Latham last year at 7, where didn't love Latham, liked him, thought there was a lot of potential, and in the right situation, he could still be a great player. But like within a year, the Titans have already moved him back to his natural spot at right tackle. So, like, and if it's like, hey, we're going to start him at guard at first, and then we're going to ease him into left tackle because tackle early on is really difficult. Like, again, I'm not the thinking smart, right? It's a sound way of thinking about run the football anyways and shore up the interior for our young quarterback. And, he can use his athleticism against so many pressure against the tackles. Well, that's fair. But what if, like, now in year 2, he's learning another new position? I don't want to get into that with him. And I think the Patriots want to stay away from the O-line Tetris. I don't know if they want to get it. They've done a lot of that over the last couple of years, and I don't think it helps you at all.
I'd rather Hunter, Carter, Graham, and then if you go trade up in the back end of the first round and go, if you're like, just, hey, we just want the best lineman available, then go draft Gray Zabel and play him at left guard.
Connerly or one of these guys.
Right, like it's just
Simmons worked out today, so maybe you looked at him and said, hey, like, I mean, what they really should do is probably go Campbell and Simmons or Membu and Simmons and like really just solidify like, hey,
right,
we're set now.
We got a couple dudes that we're going to be playing at tackle for the next 10 years, we hope. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And like I said, I've sort of, in the last 48 hours or so, I'm sort of wrapping my head around that's probably the direction they're going to go. And I don't love it. That's all I'll say. I don't love it. And I hope that they're right for their sake. Otherwise, you're going to be doing the same thing next year or the year after that, looking to find an actual left tackle to play an important position for Drake May. Awesome college basketball games this weekend. If you got to go to one, you're lucky. I would have definitely liked to have been at some of those. And if you want to go to some of the games that start Thursday night, Friday, over the weekend as well for college basketball or NBA, Major League Baseball, we talk about, just use Gametime. It's an awesome app. So easy to use. You can save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Toggle the feature that shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkouts. Other places try to sneak with you on that one. And then I mentioned it a million times, I'll keep mentioning it. Get the panoramic view from your seat so you see exactly where you're sitting. So it's not like the old Boston Garden days where you're sitting behind a pole or at Fenway Park, which you still can sit behind a pole. And they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference, which I love. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code CLNS for 20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Oh, it's Gametime. So the Giants listened to us on the pod when we said, you know what, just sign Jameis, right? That makes sense. Like, look, again, there's wild variance with him, but if you get him on a heater for 4 or 5 games, you might win 3 or 4 of those. And for a team that's in desperate need of saving people's jobs, that could be the difference for them. Also, hey, we thought Shedeur Sanders was in play at 3. If he's there, it gives him a little time to get Shedeur up to speed, because some people believe, and talking around people around the league, that he could use a little bit of seasoning before you don't throw him in there on day one. Cam Ward will get thrown in there on day one. He will not. But then on Tuesday night, again, we're taping this Wednesday, 4:31 p.m., they signed Russell Wilson. Again, a hilarious contract. The headline, Russell Wilson, 1-year deal, $21.5 million. Guaranteed $10 million.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. So in other words, if he doesn't play, we're only on the hook for 10. If he doesn't meet all these bonuses, we're only on the hook for 10. So they've only invested in those 2 quarterbacks $14 million in change in guaranteed money. They have DeVito on the contract as well. What does this signal to you? Did you see this and think, okay, they're kicking the can down the road, or they're going to take a a Jackson Dart later in the first round by trading back up, or Tyler Shuck in the second round or third round, and try to develop a quarterback that way and let these two veteran guys just duke it out. And hey, we'll ride the hot hand. If Russell gets hot, we'll go with Russell. If Russell starts to suck, bring in Jameis and let him chuck it all over the yard. Like, what do you think? Or do you think Shedeur is still in play at 3?
I'll keep this one relatively short. I think Shedeur is still in play. I don't think this should have any effect on you long term. I think the Giants looked at it and said, we need to have every opportunity to have an able-bodied quarterback out there that's not named Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle and Daniel Jones and whatever. And like, if it's Jameis, great. Rich Cimini had an interesting tweet yesterday, who covers the Jets for ESPN, that it kind of reminded him of when the Jets brought in Josh McCown, Sam Darnold, obviously, who they drafted at 3, and they also had Teddy Bridgewater. They ended up trading Teddy Bridgewater for a third-round pick during camp when he showed he was healthy. So the Jets got some value there. And then after that, obviously McCown mentored Sam before he moved on. I could see something like that where they draft Sanders and during camp, Russ or Jameis, someone gets hurt around the league, and Russ or Jameis, whoever it may be, is playing well, and they feel good about both guys, and they flip them for a pick or whatever it may be. There's that possibility. I had a buddy text me that what if the Giants take Hunter at 3, right? He falls to 3. They take Carter, and Browns take Carter or Sanders, whatever. And then the Giants trade back up after Shedeur starts falling and draft Shedeur, and they have Hunter and Shedeur, and Dion gets to basically angle for the Giants job. And it makes the Giants a bunch of money, and they're honestly, as crazy as that sounds,
a lot of tickets that way.
You would, and I don't think it's actually as crazy as you say it out loud. Either way, I think this keeps him in the quarterback market. I think your floor is higher now. Russ is a higher floor guy at this point. Jameis is your high variance guy. I will say, Shedeur, Jameis, and Russ would be the corniest quarterback room. It's already the corniest quarterback room in the league with DeVito too. But
can't we get a camera in there for that? I know that they're not doing that ever again.
I don't want to see a damn thing about this, because it's going to be who can say something more ridiculous? Mr. Diarrhea Man versus Mr. Snow Angels. It's I'm good.
Oh, come on. You say you don't like fun.
No, Hard Knocks missed it a year early.
I know they did, because that would be spectacular. I'm with you. I think Shedeur is still in play here. I think as I try to look, I think Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, although both on the hot seat, I think they're operating still on some different timetables, because if Joe Shane hits with his draft picks, but they only win 5 or 6 games, I could see Joe Shane keeping his job and Brian Daboll not. Because Joe Shane could say, look, I got neighbors. I did this, I did that. I drafted this guy. He's awesome, whatever. A couple good free agent signings. Brian Burns maybe pops here in year 2, whatever the case may be. Look what I did. And maybe he gets to stay, which, again, we've talked about having a GM and head coach on the wrong timetables is idiotic. But if you're Daboll, you've addressed who's going to start for me right away. It's going to be one of these guys, right? Unless whoever they draft comes in and blows them away. You start these guys for 6-7 weeks. Kid's making progress. You're 3-5. You're 4-6. Turn it over to the kid. The kid turns in 2 or 3 really nice games. 300 yards pass, a couple touchdowns. Got synergy with Malik Neighbors. Whatever. Can Daboll say, "Well, we got our guy. We had to get him ready. We got him ready, and look what happened when we got him ready. We're ready to take off now. Do you really want to change coaches, change offenses with this quarterback that I just got prepared and you saw what he could be in this league in the second half of the season?" To me, I'm just trying to spin it how does this work in his head? And I'm wondering if that's not the best play for him. I don't have to start the kid right away. I get the kid ready. Boom. We hit the ground running at some point during the course of the season. And then I can say, hey, we didn't make the playoffs, but did you see where I got the quarterback? We're going in the right direction. Big draft for us, big free agency. Boom. We take off for a playoff team next year. Before we get out of here, you wanted to talk about the Browns, who sit at 2. And the Browns, I think, have made it pretty clear that they're open for business. They've also been tied to Shedeur, whether you believe that or not. Todd McShay went on a 20-minute rant on the McShay show where he made some compelling cases. Hey, look at who Stefanski has succeeded with. These are quarterbacks that are more pocket passers. He's won games with guys that you wouldn't consider to be good quarterbacks. Shedeur's better than that. Will he get him ready? I still don't necessarily buy it. And again, I think, to the point we keep making about Cleveland, right, is that they've screwed up this whole process. The trade for Deshaun was a disaster. I mean, I understand why they made it, but it was a disaster. It's been a disaster. It's weighing on their cap and will for at least a couple more years. They pay Myles Garrett all this money at 29. I'd have traded him. I'd have gotten multiple first-round picks and just started the build. But as you mentioned, I think on one of the pods, these guys have to save their jobs too.
Yep.
And trading Myles Garrett, in their mind, does not help them save their jobs. Could you see Shedeur at 2, or should there be a team that absolutely positively should get the hell out of there if they can and accumulate more assets?
Yes to the second part, but I don't love Shedeur, but he does fit O'Connell really. I mean,
Stefanski, yeah.
really well. I don't know how they could do it. I would trade for Kirk Cousins for them, and I would, if you like the quarterback, take your shot. He does make sense for them in terms of like play style and whatever. I think Dion's made it quite clear he wants Shedeur in New York, but again, like how much better are these guys making the Browns at this point right now? They're not like outside of quarterback, they're not going to drastically improve that much. So I would think the Kirk route, and like you're basically done with his deal after the year. Watson, you're getting really close to being able to like move off of after this year. Kirk at least offers you a floor, and could he win 7 or 8 games? And Stefanski's like, hey, dude, like I need one shot, with a guy, and we have all these assets. I don't know. I'd lean trade back, but I say this about the Giants, and I say this about like if you love a quarterback, go for it.
It's the nature of the beast. If you think you can win with that guy, you can't keep kicking it down the road, because then you're going to end up in a place where right now the only quarterback with any starting experience, I think, on their roster is Kenny Pickett, which
you're not starting Kenny Pickett.
You cannot do that.
He's rosterable, but they can't start him.
I will say this. I think Travis Hunter makes a ton of sense there.
Oh yeah.
One, because of the buzz of the player.
And Denzel Ward, it helps the young quarterback, whoever it may be.
Exactly. Like I think of the teams early, they to me make the most sense of like, hey, you know what? We'll try you both. You can play both ways. We'll just, we'll get some attention. We'll sell a crap ton of jerseys. We'll sell out some seats. And he's a really talented kid. I don't want to diminish that part of it. He's really good. And I would like him to concentrate on one as opposed to the other, trying to do both. But I could see that making a lot of sense in there. I could see the Hunter jerseys all over Cleveland Stadium. And again, trying to build a new stadium as well. And Leo trying to chip in. Leo, you're right. It's time, Leo. I got to go make TV. Will's had a day. We got stuff to do. So we thank you for tuning into the Wednesday, a rare Wednesday edition of the All 32 pod. Remember to rate, review, like, listen, subscribe, tell your friends, tell their friends. We appreciate you. Maybe we'll see you at the end of the week. If not, certainly on Monday as we come back at you, getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. Looking forward to it. We'll see you soon.